might be squirming. But
That's okay. It's a moving picture, so you can squirm all you want. um, I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you was just to describe your earliest memories.
I guess the earliest memory that I can remember was when I was about 3, when I went to see my dad in the hospital. And I didn't remember until I went to the hospital to see my mother in the same hospital and saw the steps. And then it all came back to me,
Oh.
inch by inch. I remembered going in and seeing a person in the bed, and I didn't realize it was my dad. You know, I just was 3, it was just a person in bed. And my mother says, "Why don't you kids go out and sit on the steps?" So we went out and sat on the steps. And it was so clear in my mind, those steps. And the minute I saw them, this all came back to me, and my mother said I was 3. So that's the earliest I can remember. I remember preschool when Daisy and Pat used to tease me. Grandma lived with us, and Pat was 5 years older than Daisy. And they were always getting me to do something that go out and sell samples of cloth or do all kinds of things. And they'd say, "Go sell this. You know, why don't you go out and sell this?" Or they did all kinds of tricks on me.
What year would that have been?
Well, it was before I started school, so it would have been sometime before I was 6. So, you know, I don't know. It could have been 4 or 5. Who knows?
What year would that be?
Well, I was born in 26, so that would have been 1931. Maybe. Somewhere in that time.
So
Because we didn't go to kindergarten
this
then.
is the Depression is already.
The Depression was on. You know, it had hit. When Mother and Grandmother moved together, the Depression had already hit. Because my father died in 29.
What did he do?
My father was a farmer. And well, he worked in the oil fields.
Do you know what he did?
He was a I can't remember what the hens call them now. I have heard what they were called, but I don't remember exactly. But he worked around oil wells, and then of course he lived on a farm, and they farmed also.
What did they farm?
I don't remember that. They had cows and chickens and that sort of thing. I don't remember crops necessarily with them. I do with my uncle when I lived in Aunt when I lived with him.
Was this a different house or the same house that your mother lived in?
Oh no, it was different. I don't even know what house that was. It was out in the country, and in later years we were by the place, and Mom said that's where we lived when your dad died, and it was out in the middle of somewhere. I don't even know if the house was still there.
So it wasn't even close to the town.
It was close to Walters, yeah. Pretty close, because they were actually drilling wells around Walters.
Oh.
It was an oil between Walters and Duncan and Comanche.
What was your father's full name?
William Lafayette McLean.
And your mom's?
Naomi Ruth Morris, with 2 S's.
So her maiden name was Morris, with 2 S's.
And my grandmother's maiden name was Campbell. And I knew her mother up until I was about in junior high. We used to see her once a year or so. So she was my great-grandmother.
Did you know her name?
Campbell, of course. And I think that's what we called her, Grandma Campbell. No. I probably did know it, but we didn't call first names. Kids never called anybody by their first name, so as far as I knew, it was just Grandma Campbell. Yeah. She used to, I remember at Thanksgiving and all, every time she'd come, we'd always make this big bowl of fruit salad with grapes and cut them, take the seeds out and that sort of thing. Jell-O. That was a common, like our dishes that we have now for our sweet potato or something that we have now for Thanksgiving. That was one of the things we did, and I remember that. That was always fun and good, a treat. I remember I remember going to the movies some on Saturday. Cost us a nickel. And we used to go maybe once or twice a year, or 3 times a year, not too often. And I remember that it cost a nickel to go, and I remember we saw cowboy movies, you know.
So were they black and white?
Yeah, black and white.
Did they have sound?
You know, I don't know if they did or not. There was sound, but I don't think it was their speaking sound. It might have been recorded sound. There was sound, but I don't. You know, when you're that age, you don't pay any attention to what it is. You just see. Because I would have probably been 5 or 6, maybe.
Was there a movie theater?
Yeah, yeah. We had a theater, small theater in town. I remember I hardly remember where we lived anywhere, any time before we moved to the house on the main street of Walter, or the main highway there. And we moved there before Mom married Johnny. That's where she was living when they got married.
Who's Johnny?
That's Sherry's dad.
Okay. And so his name was Bohannon.
Bohannon. John Hiram Bohannon, I think is what it was.
Was he the next husband after your dad?
So I remember when we moved down there, because they were putting the highway through, and we used to take the cow out and stake them in different places to eat grass, because we always had a cow from the farm. When my dad died, Mom kept a cow, and then she'd have them bred and have a calf, and we'd sell that if it was a male calf, and you know, have or keep it if it was a female, and you know, alternate. So we always had milk and butter and things like that.
Now, would that have been at the house that I knew?
No, no, no. We didn't move. We didn't move to that house until I was in high school.
So where was the next place that you lived?
We lived in that house until we moved out by the parishes in a big old house out there. It was a big, beautiful old house, and didn't have an inside bathroom. We had to go out to an outside bathroom. And I remember that we took our baths on Saturday night with a big tub, and we'd heat water with a tea kettle and fill it up, and everybody took a bath in the same tub, you know, washed their hair and took a bath.
Once a week?
Yeah, Saturday night for church on Sunday. And it always felt good to get in that, you know, we had a big tub, and felt good to get in that water and get our hair washed. And Mom would heat water on the tea kettle and pour it over our hair to rinse it, and, you know, cool it down. I remember that. And then I remember one night a storm, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I went out it was kind of a windy, not rain, but a windy like storm. And everything was pitch black out there because there were no street lights or anything. We were out of the city limits. And I remember I went out the back door to go out to the John, and I stepped in a bucket, and it scared the daylights out of me because this bucket blew there, and of course it stepped in it and knocked my leg, and I was hurting like crazy and scared in the dark because we didn't have flashlights or anything because we didn't have electricity either. We had a light. We had our stove was with coal oil, you know, kerosene stove, and we had wood stove for heating. That's about what it was. Coal.
Where did the wood come from?
Where did the wood come from?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wherever you could gather up wood. We didn't have a wood fire. We didn't have a fire too often. Just if it was really cold.
Like when it snows in the winter?
Yeah, well, it didn't snow every winter there.
Oh.
Yeah, we'd have snow on occasion, and we'd have some cold weather. But most of the time, we got used to just living in a pretty cool place, and we'd go around when she was cooking in the kitchen where it'd be warm.
Mm.
You know, so we would gather around there rather than waste any fuel for heating. We had used some coal, and you could buy coal in a little stove, coal or wood. We lived there until, well, I was a sophomore in high school. And we moved from there down to the other house where she bought that house.
Why did you move?
Because she bought this, got a chance to buy this house, and Uncle Joe loaned her enough money to buy it. Cost $800 for the house. And it was a chance for us to have a place of our own, you know, and that was where she lived then until she sold it when she came out here. So it was a big deal to have a house because we'd always had a rented place, and so this one was, when we moved in, it was a living room and a kitchen and eating place all together, and then it had one major bedroom and then a little side room that had been built on, but it had an inside toilet.
Was it 2 stories?
Not then.
Oh, that
Mom had
was-
it. Mom had that added after after a while. She had the kitchen side and the upstairs added, and the family room all added at a later date. Not even when I was there. It wasn't there when I was there. So I had my bed in the little shed room because they made a shed out, and then the bathroom was at the end of that. If you remember, I don't know, you remember going there? There was a tiny little room there. That was where I slept. I had a little half bed in there. They made it larger, and that's where Mom and Wilburn slept then later. But when I was there, it was only about as wide as from here to just very small. And we had a little cot-like bed for me, and Daisy and Billy slept in the other room. Oh, where Mom slept, come to think about it. Oh, they had 2 beds in there. That was it, in that room. Mom slept in one, and the girls, Daisy and Billy, slept in the other.
So you had your own?
Yeah, I had a little bed of my own.
How come?
I don't know. I don't know why. I just lucked out, I guess.
You think the oldest, the Daisy, would have had the room?
I don't know why it was. I think they chose to sleep in there because they had a better mattress. I had a feather mattress, and feather mattresses you had to make up every day. You had to fluff them up and before you could make your bed or anything. And I don't think they wanted it. And I said I'd like to have that feather mattress, so I slept on a feather mattress. Soft, you know, and it'd go right down. Chicken feathers. But
What was your daily routine like?
oh, when? Yeah, I don't remember daily routines too much. I probably remember high school years. We were running that one little restaurant, and I remember my mom opened this little restaurant next door to the theater. And I think it was my junior and senior year. Because what I did is change my study halls. I'd get up in the morning and go up and open at 5:30. Then I'd go to school, and I had a study hall before lunch, and I'd come at lunchtime through lunch hour and that, and work and serve during lunchtime. And then when school was out, I'd stop by and work there so Mom could get a chance to go to the bank or wherever she needed to go, because she would be there alone when we were at school. And Billy didn't help. Daisy did some, but Daisy got married before while we still had it, and so.
How much older was she?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and see, she didn't graduate from high school. She got married out of high school.
How old would she have been?
17 maybe. 16, 17, 17.
Not younger than 17.
No, 17, I think. Because I would have been 15, and that's, see, when I graduated when I was 16, so I would have been a junior when I was 15.
Did you skip a grade?
The 8th grade, yeah. I stayed with my aunt the year between the 7th, I stayed with my aunt the year I was in the 7th grade and went to a country school. And we had to walk 2 miles to school. And had to get up in the morning and milk cows before we walked. I was older than any of Ainford's kids. Charlie was the next in line, and he was about 2 years younger than me. So I got to do most of the stuff. And I remember going out there and milking the cows, freezing to death, and the cows would swat their tail in your face. I hated it. I used to just get a splitting headache by the time I was through milking a cow. So never in my life will I ever live on a farm. I made up my mind then. But anyway, that's how I happened to skip the 8th grade. I went to a country school that had the 4th through the 8th in one room and the 1st through the 4th in the other room. So I was in there with the 8th graders, and when and in Oklahoma, before you can get out of the 8th grade, you have to take a test. So I asked if I could take the 8th grade test when they gave it to them. And the teacher said, of course, you can take it. Well, the county superintendent, when he got the scores, he came back to my mom and he says, I know you don't have much money, so he says it would be a waste of time for her to go in the 8th grade because she made the best scores in the county in math, for example. And so he said, I will give her her 8th grade diploma and she can go into the 9th grade. So I did. And then I moved into Walters with Mom then.
Why had you gone to live with Aunt Fern?
I don't remember why exactly.
Did she need help with?
Yeah, I never quite figured out why I did because I really didn't particularly like it.
Right.
Yeah, but it seemed to have to work out to make things work out. I don't know. I don't know exactly why. I often wondered why, and I never
You
particularly
were
asked
just told that you had to do it.
Well, it just seemed to come about that was what I was going to have to do. And they moved from one farm to that one, and I, helped them move, and I don't know. Like I say, I'm not sure why. It might have been financial reasons. It might have been because they needed help. Because I did a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because she had Charlie, Jolene, and Harold. Colleen wasn't born yet, so she had 3 children, and so they did some farming, not too much, but mainly cattle, and they sold milk and eggs and that sort of thing.
What other kinds of work did you do growing up?
Growing up, well, I cleaned. Well, when I was well, the year, I guess, that I went back to Walters for school, I worked for a lady that had 2 boys, and she worked, and I used to do ironing for her and clean house. And then part of I used to do that on the weekend, and then another job I had was taking care of children. The people owned a plant store, and they had 5 children, and their oldest child was young, about 6, and she was an epileptic, and so, and then they had just a baby, 5 children under 6 or 7. No, she had to be 6, and Willa Kay, and she had a few seizures, and I had to deal with that, learn what to do, and then I used to go and help her do laundry on Saturday. We had the washing machine, and I'd help her do washing, and she'd save all the dishes. I washed all the dishes when I got home from school. And, I got paid about $1 a week for what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was glad to get it because I didn't have any money otherwise. Then, let's see. After I got out of that, and then like I said, I did the ironing for that family, kind of when she needed to have it done. And then in the summer, well, then I helped in the restaurant after that because I had the restaurant taking up my time. And then in the summer, between that year and I guess it was my sophomore year, I worked out at Fort Sill in the officers' mess and worked in the kitchen and helped serve their meals. And I got paid really good money then. About $2 a week, or 2.5. Anyway, I saved enough money to buy a nice coat, and that was the nicest thing I ever had. It was a beautiful beige camel hair coat, and I remember it was just. I saved money all summer because I got my room and board there, got to stay there, and so I saved enough money to buy that coat. It was probably $20 or 25 or
Wow.
something like that, which was a lot of money. Yeah. Then some of the other things I did, I don't remember.
You mentioned picking cotton.
One was out to 8 Ferns. When we first moved back to Walters, because we lived out on the farm a while, out with 8 Fern in a house, and we shared part of it. And I went to Geronimo School that year, and that was the year I was 11. Because that next year, we moved from there. I went with 8 Fern, and Mom moved to Walters, and that was the year when I started going to the country school. And I went to Geronimo, I guess, 1 year to school, probably 6th grade. And that was when I remember I started my period. I was playing ball and got hit in the stomach, and then I just sure that was what had happened.
Oh, but you'd been injured.
Yeah, instead it was that time.
How old would you have been?
11. So Mom had told Daisy all about it, but not me, because, and Daisy had never started, but I did, and so it scared me to death.
Sure.
Didn't know, I just knew that I'd gotten hurt. I knew it hurt when it happened, but I didn't, I kept running to the bathroom and using toilet paper. It's terrible, when you don't tell kids
Right.
about things
So
like that.
how did you find out what was really going on? Did you
Well,
tell
my
somebody?
mother discovered that
Uh,
I had some bleeding, so she, then told me about it, of course. And I had to have protection. And we didn't go out and buy Kotex. We took old rags and made pads out of them, and that's what we wore, so for protection. And we washed them out and wore them again. I don't think people could even imagine doing something like that, Yeah, I'm sure in other countries they do, but, they're less modern than we are. But, so we picked cotton out there because he grew cotton. And then when we moved back to Walters, the summer before I went out to, I guess it was summer after, in the fall we picked cotton. There was a cotton picking job and we picked cotton. Only a couple of times that we did it, like a couple of seasons, not all the time. And that was really hard work. I remember dragging that sack on your back and picking this cotton and taking it to the scales and weighing it,
What time of year would that have been?
They harvested in about September, so it would have been like on the weekends. Sometimes a little before school started, late August. But I remember when we lived out at that farm, and I went to Geronimo, that's when Uncle Joe had planted watermelon between the cotton rows. And we had go out and get watermelons when they were ripe and take them down to a little creek and put them in for a while to get them cool, and then break them open and eat them. A lot of watermelons. That was one of the things we did. I don't know. Let's see. How much other time? After the Fort Sill, then I graduated from high school, and I went to work for the in Lawton at a was at the Red Cross as a clerk, and I worked there for how long? That summer. I'm trying to think what happened. I don't remember what happened. It would have been that summer, and then I don't remember what happened after that. Isn't that funny? It kind of blocks out. Like I know I met Stan and married him when I was 17, so it would have been. We were married in July, but I think it was.
How long did you date before you married?
Probably 6 weeks
Was that
with Stan.
normal in those days?
Yeah, I guess, because it was during the war, and everybody was, I'm going to leave and have to go away. So, yeah. So, Then of course after I married him, he was sent out to Colorado, and that's when I had the experience of going out there on the train, and it stopped at the train stopped out on the railroad tracks for the Camp Hale. That's where he was, and there was no station or anything, and the snow was about this deep, and I'd bought shoes with the toes out, didn't have overshoes or anything, had a jacket, and here I was just put out in the snow, waiting for the van that came from the the club where we stayed, where I was going to stay, and we could stay there 3 nights, and then you had to go or go somewhere else. So I stayed there the 3 nights, and then I came back, got a job at the PX, and I worked at the PX all the time I was there, and then I moved.
Tell me a little bit more about Stan.
A little bit about him.
Yeah. What did you like about him?
Well, I don't know. I guess he was good looking, and
Where was he from originally?
he's California.
Oh.
So then I came out from there. I came out here and lived with his parents after Colorado, and I was pregnant then, and had Dina
What year was that?
in 44, I think. Yeah, August 30th, 1944. Because I graduated in 43. So all that happened from 43 to 44. But anyway, that was when the 3 nights were up. We went into, what was the name of that place? And had a motel. And that's when Stan dared me to drink a glass of booze. And I can't remember now what it was. Anyway, a water glass of it. I never had drank in my life, anything. And I drank it straight down and passed out. Woke up with my nose bleeding, and because it was up at 10,000 feet altitude. It's a wonder I didn't die.
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, I never did drink anymore after that.
What was dating like?
USO dances, and because he didn't have a car and I didn't have a car, so I'm dating when you go up there. He did come down to Walter's with some other guys, and we'd go up to Joe's and dance or
Had you
have
ever
dinner.
dated before that?
Occasionally, not too much. Just to go out and go to a movie or go to, like I say, go to a USO dance and dance with somebody, and but I didn't do too much dating.
Had you ever slept with a man before you got married?
No, never. I wouldn't have thought of it.
Did you know what to expect?
Not exactly.
And so what was that like for you?
It was not exactly a pleasant experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just I just figured it was something that had to go on, so that was it.
Right.
And
Did that ever change?
well, somewhat, of course, but Stan was not a very affectionate person, a real affectionate person. Not like your dad. He was always, a very affectionate person, where Stan was not. He was kind and good, but he was not an affectionate person like your dad.
So he wasn't cuddly?
No, not the kind. And then besides, I slept in a barracks and he slept in a different one. So,
Maybe too cuddly.
No, you don't. But, I thought that's just what, that's what it has to be. If I stay here, I have to work, and if I work, I have to live in the barracks, so.
Where did you go on your honeymoon?
I don't think we had one.
Well, where did you sleep together the first time?
Gee, I don't even remember. Let me think. And that's something, I don't even remember that. Where, let me think. probably stayed at my grandmother's in Lawton. Yeah, I probably was staying there because I was working up there, so I was living at her house.
That didn't feel awkward.
No, well, you know, she had a bedroom on the other side of the house, so
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't like you were. Yeah, yeah. Don't remember too much about that. You know, it's been a long time ago. It wasn't startling memories, I guess.
Who were your friends?
Oh, I had some friends at school. I never was one to go stay all night. Like Daisy and Billy used to stay all night with their friends, and I never. I had friends like I had Alma Jean Stitcher that we did things together after school or whenever we had time or at school, ran around at school. I was a pep squad leader, and she was in the pep club, and um, we did school activities together, and we're good friends. And I had two or three of friends like that. Alma Jean, I know, was the one that probably spent more time with.
Do you know where she is now?
Um, yeah, she. I saw her at the last reunion. I was trying to think where she lived. I think she moved to Missouri or Alabama, or I don't think she lived around Walters. I don't remember. You know, once I left Walters, then I kind of, the friends that, I've made a lot of friends since that I've kept in contact with, but the high school and all that, I didn't keep in contact with them.
How, did you come by train to California?
No, by bus.
No.
Hmm.
Where did you land?
In San Bernardino, down at Third and East Street, right across from Harris Company, at Antlers Hotel at the time. It's not there anymore, and it was colder than. Oh, wind was blowing so cold. It was colder than it was when I was in Colorado because the wind was so cold, and I got off that bus, I was going to freeze to death. And then I met, of course, Stan's folks for the first time.
What was that like?
Oh, they were so nice. I liked them. They were always very nice. I lived with them while I was pregnant. And of course, Stan came with me from there to San Bernardino, and I remember we played cards on the way. We sat across the back of the bus and played poker, penny ante poker, and all the way across.
How'd you feel about going to California?
Well, I was glad to get here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd always heard about it. Always seemed like a place. And then, of course, the longer I lived here, the better I liked it. So, and of course, Dina was born here in San Bernardino, and so I was just felt from then on it was my home. You know, it's where I preferred living. Then I went back to Oklahoma.
How come?
Because Stan and I got divorced.
How did that happen?
He was running around with other people.
Other women?
Yeah. And,
How did you find out?
he told me.
Why?
I don't think he wanted to be married anymore, and so it
He
was.
just wasn't serious.
Yeah. So, once he got out of the service and he was, he just didn't want to be married anymore, and I didn't want to be married to somebody who didn't want to be married to me. So
Yeah.
I moved back home with my mom when
Was
Dina was
that-
just a baby.
How was that for you?
It was disappointing, very disappointing, and but I had Dina, and she kept me pretty busy, and it wasn't long till I married Ben. After our divorce was final. In fact, we had an annulment. We didn't get a divorce because I wasn't of age, and he didn't have permission for me to get married. So it was actually an annulment.
From Stan.
Yeah.
And Ben was in Oklahoma?
Uh-huh. He was there.
How did you know him?
I don't remember how I met him exactly. I think mutual friends. And he had this little girl that was, I don't know, about 2 years older than Dina. and his ex-wife had neglected her, and so he had custody of her, and he didn't know much how to handle her, and I thought, and he, said it'd be so nice to have you as a mother for him, and it sounded like a good deal, and so we got married, and there wasn't a lot of love. We liked to bowl.
Okay.
He was a good bowler, and um, he was a kind person. He was a good person.
What did he do?
He did miscellaneous jobs. I know we moved out to Amarillo, Texas. I've got to get a Kleenex.
Sure.
I'll use this. Move out to Amarillo, Texas, and with some friends of his, and he had a job out there, and he worked in a machine shop, did machine work. Yeah.
You have tea there. You can drink if you want.
Yeah, it's too hot. I couldn't drink
Oh.
it. Maybe it's cool enough now. So we moved out there, and I took care of Dina and Linda. But there just was no love there, It became a chore, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to be in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm. Was he much older?
No, not too much. He was probably, I don't even know how much older. He was probably maybe 3, maybe 4 years older. Not a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a hard worker. He did hard work, and he was not lazy at all. He was always out doing things, but I just couldn't see a life like that. So I moved back to California.
By yourself with Dina?
He came out, and we tried to patch it up, and there just wasn't anything there. You just, it doesn't work out when there isn't a good reason. I mean, just to be helpful.
Right.
And that's what it.
He needed a babysitter.
Yeah. Well, and he would have stuck with me forever.
Oh.
He would have. I was the one that just didn't feel like there was anything there. I just couldn't see a life like that, a hard life, and
No joy.
and it just, it just didn't seem like it was worth, I just didn't feel like that's what I wanted. After I'd been out to California, I wanted to live out here. I didn't want to live out in the Amarillo, Texas, and
Yeah.
so
Hard to go back.
yeah, so
How long were you married?
I have to stop and think. I don't even remember what date we got married right now. I can't even remember what date we got married. I know Dina had her first birthday after we were married, because I have a picture of Dina and Linda at her first birthday.
Wow.
So it wasn't too long. And she was less than 3 when we came out here, so
No more than 2 years.
yeah. I'm sure we didn't live together over a year. Yeah, altogether. Yeah, Ben, he would have stuck by you. I think forever. He was a good, hard-working person. There was nothing wrong with him. It was just nothing. The relationship was not a good, healthy one, and I just could see living in an unhealthy relationship.
Did you argue?
No, we didn't.
You just didn't.
It
You
just
wanted to stay there.
Yeah, it just wasn't. I just didn't feel like I wanted to go through life that way.
Uh-huh.
I felt like I needed to do something on my own and
How did
make.
How did he respond to that?
He was disappointed. He was hurt, and he came out, like I say, and tried to. I was living in Livermore with Mom, and he came out and tried to make sure that things were okay, and I think he's the one that filed for divorce. I think I asked him to. And,
Why had Grandma come out here?
for Jerry's surgery.
Right.
Yeah. And
Did you know what the surgery was about?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. It was unusual, and of course his dad didn't think he should have anything done about it. And Mom said she heard about this doctor at Stanford University Hospital, and she was determined to get him out and do it. Well, I had worked for the, see, when I came back, I actually lived with Stan's folks in San Bernardino, and started to work for the telephone company. And uh, um, Mom needed a car. I had a car, and Mom needed a car to take Jerry over there. So I moved up with her so I could take her and transferred up to Pleasanton at the telephone company there and worked there. I worked split hours, and I would take her over to San Francisco in the afternoon and come back and work in the evening. And so until he got through his surgery and everything. And then trying to think. When I came back down, I started working at the telephone company in '46. And that would have probably been in '47. And I lived there for, it wasn't a year, I don't believe, probably around 9 months. And I transferred back down to San Bernardino.
Was your mom still married to Jerry's father then?
No, she got a divorce from him when Jerry was small.
Was he abusive?
Very, very abusive person. Yeah, the years we lived in Temple with him, and that would have been up to fourth grade, sometime in there. I know I lived there when I was in the fourth grade. He would threaten her life, and they would argue and fuss all night, fight all night, and I remember more than once that she would get us all together and we'd walk down the railroad tracks just to get away from there at nighttime, and
Did he drink?
oh yeah, very abusive drunkard. He was a hard worker, but he was a very abusive person. And all I remember, he used to call my father, and he didn't know him or anything, syphilitic son of a bitch. That was his favorite phrase. And for no reason except to hurt her. And I remember when Jerry was born, it was shortly after that we moved back to Walters, and she divorced him. Yeah. It's hard to connect all these times. I just think of these bits of
Sure.
things that come about.
You're doing very well.
Anyway, then I found out. Then I met Fred, and I moved back down. To Walters, and I lived in this apartment with the family called McLean. And I lived in the servants' quarters up on the hill. It was where,
This was in San Bernardino.
yeah, out in Muscoy.
Muscoy.
Yeah, this house on the hill. And she rented to Dean and I. And she said, I've never rented to anybody with children before. But she says, I like you. And her name was Nina McLean. And he was Bob. And of course, the fact that my maiden name was McLean, spelled the same way. But I talked to her, and anyway, they rented this cute little, it was like I say, servants' quarters. It had a Murphy bed that came down in the living room, and a little kitchen and a bathroom and closets and a little living room, just right for us up on the hill. And it was there that I met Fred. He came up one morning. I had lived in another place with another lady that had a couple of children, and She's the one that I discovered she had breast cancer. I had had the review at the company how to check for it, and she told me about some of her symptoms, and I said, let me make the test. So I went through making the test, and everything she had was every symptom of breast cancer. And she went in, and she died of breast cancer later, but that was the first that she'd done anything about it. And that's her daughter, her oldest daughter, was going with Jim, who worked with Fred out at the base.
Jim.
I don't even remember his last name.
Oh.
Anyway, he and Loy eventually got married, but Jim told Fred about me. Of course, I had already moved out there on the hill, and he lived not too far from me, so Jim told Fred about me. And so Fred came up this one Sunday morning, knocked on my door, and he says, I'm a friend of Jim's. He sent me over to see you. I never did care much for Jim anyway, but anyway.
Not a good recommendation.
But I knew Loy, and apparently Jim had did a lot of talking about me, and said you ought to meet her, and so on and so forth. So anyway, he walked up, and I was scheduled to work that day, and I had my hair in curlers and in a bathrobe. I answered the door. I couldn't have looked worse. Anyway, I said, well, I have to work today. I have to go to work. I was working a split. I have to go to work at 10, so it must have been around 9 or 8.
What was your impression when you opened the door and this?
He reminded me of Alan Ladd.
So you thought he was cute?
Yeah, the Alan Ladd. He reminded me of Alan Ladd. And he had on his green sweater from, his Victorville sweater. And he was a nice looking man. And he said, we talked for a little while, and I said, I have to get ready to go to work. And he says, what time do you get off? No, I was working 2 to 10, I guess. I said, I get off at 10 o'clock at night. He said, do you think we could just stop by and have a Coke or something? And I said, oh, I guess so. Anyway, that's how we met. And that was in November. It was before Thanksgiving, just before Thanksgiving, I think. Yeah. And I saw him every day after that.
What year was that?
We were married in 49, and so that was 48, the end of 48. So I know we went to the New Year's parade that year, and the one and only time I ever went, and we almost froze to death. But and then we were married in February. I had a long weekend, February, Washington's birthday weekend, and we were married.
Where were you married?
In San Bernardino at the Methodist Church on over by the Marshall School. And Lusik, my friend Klusik was the maid of honor, and Walter, Aunt Mary's son, was our best man.
Where had Dad been living?
Huh?
Where was he living?
Walter at the time? He wasn't married yet.
Where was Dad living when you?
He was living with his folks out in Muscoy, just down the hill.
Mm-hmm. So he wasn't in the service at that time?
No. He was working out at Norton Air Force Base.
But not as a serviceman?
No. So that's where Jim was working. He and Jim worked together. Can't even remember Jim's last name, isn't it funny? But I never did care much for him. But he and Lloyd got married, and they were later divorced. Yeah.
And where did you go on your honeymoon?
Oh, we went to Mexico.
Yeah. How did you decide to go to Mexico?
Oh, I don't know. I think Fred wanted to go down, and I said, that's not. And I'd never been there. It was kind of a mutual decision. We went down to Ensenada.
Where'd you stay?
At a hotel that is no longer there. I was trying to think. There is where it was. There's something else there now. Uh,
Did he have a car? Or did you have a car?
I had a car.
You had a car.
I bought a car when I was still working. Right after when I first went to work, I bought a Plymouth, but he had a car because he had bought let's see, a '49 Ford, and of course his dad couldn't drive. He bought it with it. He had bought it anyway, and um, I don't remember when he bought the car.
So that
He bought it before we were married.
Which car did you drive to Mexico?
His car.
Uh,
Yeah, his '49 Ford.
what was that like?
Went to Mexico?
Yeah.
Well, I got sick.
Yeah.
It um, it was a fun trip, and then I had on my going away suit and went out aboard a boat in the bay and went up to look all over. It was a military boat, and they let Fred talk to them, and they came aboard because he could speak Spanish enough to talk to them, and we went up to the top deck, and when I started down, I hung my skirt on the top railing and ripped it that far. And it wasn't ripped at the seam, it was actually torn. I never could wear it again. Talk about being embarrassed with all these sailors looking at But we explored Ensenada, quite a lot, was around, but I got sick. I drank the water and got sick. He drank beer and didn't get sick.
Did he drink too much then?
Yeah, he did. He was drinking too much then.
When did you first get an inkling that it might be a problem?
Yeah, I don't remember. I knew, and I don't remember when I recognized that when he took the first beer that that it could very well end up drunk, and but I don't remember when, and there was periods of time that he didn't drink, and
When did you become aware that he'd had mental problems?
when he was in the service, when he was recalled, and we were in Georgia, then they sent him down to Florida, for the mental place there. And that was another experience.
What had happened?
I don't remember, because I don't think there was any attempted suicide then yet. And there might have been.
Did he act strangely?
I think it was no, but it was hard to say. I don't remember any particularly. We had Bud when we were there, and Margaret and Charles and us ran around together and went on picnics and what have you, because they had a girl the same, about the same age, and
That was in Georgia.
yeah. But that's where he was sent to
And you don't remember what caused
the exact incident. No, I don't. Isn't that funny? I can't remember what was the.
Is it possible you never knew?
I suppose it is, but I don't think so. I think I probably knew, but I just can't remember the circumstance, because it was after Bud had had his surgery. Let's see, Bud was about a year old when we came back, and he went down, was down there before we came back. I think he had made up his mind he wanted to get out of the service, but I don't remember how You know, he had been recalled for the Korean War, and he wanted to get out. He was going to want to come back home to San Bernardino. We kept our house there.
When did you get the house?
We bought the house in June. Of 1950, and he was recalled in September. We bought it before it was finished, or, you know, had made arrangements for it, and we moved in the 1st of September, and he was recalled in September, that month, recalled in the service. So we bought it then, and then I'm kind of getting these dates mixed up. I have to think of the sequence of things.
Talk to more about what happened down in Florida. So he was sent to a mental health center there?
Yeah, and I guess he was treated, and of course I drove down with the 2 kids. I'm sure you've heard about my experience driving down that night. I left, they had packed all their stuff up to move back to San Bernardino, and so the 2 kids and I drove down to Fort Walton Beach to see him, and I left at night because I thought the kids will sleep. Well, I got on the road down, and the Okefenokee forest flats were in fire. Cypress trees were in fire all along there. You just blazes all along where the cypress trees were burning. Then I no sooner passed that area than I went through this pitch black, no lights, trees over the road for several miles, and I needed to go to the bathroom so bad. And a cow walked out in front of me, and you couldn't see hardly anything. It was a hair-raising night until I get to somewhere, and it seemed like it was miles and miles and miles before I got to anywhere I could get out of the car. And of course, both the kids were asleep, and I was driving it down there. I don't even know how far it is, but it was a pretty good drive. And so I was glad to get to someplace where I could find a restroom. No, it was a swampland, you know, through there after we even left where the forest fires were, not forest fires, swamp fires.
What road would that have been?
It was one of the highways, but it was only just a narrow 2-lane highway going down South Georgia into Florida.
And how long did you stay in Florida?
Just a few days, 2 weeks maybe.
And they were treating him there?
Yeah, and then he was released to come home, and we drove back home through, you know, down New Orleans and back through that way.
Do you know what treatments he had?
He didn't have any shock treatments because that was some of the things that. But I talked to his psychiatrist, and you know, he was on medication mainly. Almost all the time was medication.
And it helped.
Yeah. As long as he stayed away from the booze, you know, because the worst things is, you know, almost was always connected to drinking. You know, we had those few times that he, you know, cut himself and all over, and it was horrible. You know.
Did that happen in Georgia?
No, it happened in San Bernardino.
Mm-hmm. I remember one incident.
Yeah, it was more than once. And of course the threats and the fight over the keys to keep him from driving when he was drinking and
What
things.
did he threat?
Well, with himself, you know, with the knife and pointed to, you know, that sort of thing.
And what was he saying? I mean,
I don't know. Just you know, it just was an unpleasant situation, and I don't remember exactly. Yeah.
sounds pretty irrational.
Huh?
It sounds like it was pretty irrational. There wasn't any. He'd just be drinking, and then.
I don't know. One thing would lead to another. You know, I don't know where. I just. Most of the time would be when I wasn't there, and then I'd come back and find this. You know, when I was working, and come back and find
Right.
a bad situation.
Was he caring for us?
Was he what?
Was he caring for the children?
Well, see, I didn't have, Dina was 9, when you were born, so, no, your grandma took care of you. And of course she was pretty much with me, and I guess Dina would be with your grandmother too, She looked after him when she would go to school, was going to school, but, we had I had a lot of disagreements with his folks over what I expected of Fred and what they expected of Dina. They would say, well, Dina doesn't do that. I expected him to do some little chores or things around. And they'd say, well, Freddie's sick, he can't do that. So when they were with me one time, when we went to talk to the psychiatrist in front of them, I said, would you tell me what kind of restrictions you'd have on kind of work he would do? He said, he can do anything you can get him to do. In front of them. He is, he's not physically too ill to do anything. So anything you can get him to do, he could do. They were backed off a little bit after that, but they used to say, I'd come home from work and things would be in a big mess where I'd been drinking and cigarette butts around, and of course I'd be tired and have to get dinner and all this stuff together, and I used to think, you could do at least something, you could at least clean up after yourself, and his folks used to say, you shouldn't get on Freddie, he's sick, he can't do it. Yeah. Of course they lived close by and knew things that were going on. But, I had a few words with them. I remember one time when we were sitting, and they were having dinner with us, and Dan spit on Grandma Schindler. And boy, I just hit the roof. I said, don't you ever spit on anybody again. And I made him leave the table for a while. Oh, you just work too hard, and you're too hard. You're too hard on him. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'll never allow my kids to spit on anybody.